Deeper dive on the bill and what's next. We welcome back John Quelch, Dean of the Herbert Business School, University of Miami. Good to see you, sir. You know, you are almost as young as I am, that you remember every president in the past probably, let's just go back 20 years. And they've always talked about infrastructure. Let's have more steel, let's have more roads, let's fix this, let's fix that. Every year, like clockwork. How's this year any different?
So Phil, good evening. Good to be with you as always. Infrastructure is a difficult issue for politicians in democratic societies because, of course, the investment that you make today may only come to fruition many years away. And the benefits, therefore, may not necessarily accrue to you in the short term, but accrue to someone else holding your political office in the longer term. So that's one reason why we see infrastructure investments heavily touted, but often they don't come to fruition as quickly as we would like. In addition, environmental permitting has become so complicated in the U.S. that many of these infrastructure projects get bogged down in the heavy lifting of debate with local residents who don't want the projects in their area, or with environmentalists who see some negative effects.
So John, you have now touched on a big chord, which I have been complaining about for the longest time. President Biden shouldn't be bragging about the bill. He should be going back to his here in Washington, D.C. and fixing the unnecessary government regulations that have stifled investments. People want to invest in stuff, but I'll give you example out of example. You got a 20-year train in California that hasn't been built. You got a 20-year light rail system in Seattle that they're still building some 25 years later because of all the environmental regulations, both local and state. Why doesn't he focus on that?
Well, that's a very difficult thing for him to do because it's central to the tenets of the progressive section of the Democratic Party, which stands firm for environmental protections and for tough permitting regulations. But I think what's happening here is that there is a little bit of showmanship in the run-up to the election. The infrastructure investments that were in the bill that you refer to, they cover any number of congressional districts around the country. And so in all of these districts, there is a building program that can be touted with the promise of additional jobs, with the promise of additional economic growth. And so it's a program that is beautifully distributed geographically to maximize political impact.
You are being so politically correct. Basically, the people who scream the loudest get the most money, right? And so, on a serious note, we have some water issues that have been going on, you know, from Jackson to Baltimore to New York, and there are a lot of other cities. And I don't want to ignore what's happening in the southwest region of the U.S. either. You've got reservoirs that are shrinking at an alarming pace. Does the White House have a plan to address this with more than just words at this time?
Well, I can't speak for the White House and wouldn't attempt to do so. But I do think that these visual images that we see of the declining water level in Lake Mead, for example, which you're referring to in the southwest, and the Colorado River and the Hoover Dam, all of these visuals do send the message heavily to the public that there is a problem here with respect to climate change impacts that is not going to go away. And certainly the water shortage in the West, where now different states are, of course, competing with each other for the right to have that water, that obviously going to drive up the price of water to residents in those states. But in addition, it's becoming a big bone of political contention.
John, I want to get to one last major important point. While the deadline's not until Friday, railroad unions are negotiating with their employers, and this could impact up to 100,000 railway workers. The deadline is Friday. If they don't come to an agreement, you're going to see a screech and halt to everything that's transported by rail, and that's food, that's goods, that's medicines, and it's also people.
Rail is a very important part of the free flow of commerce in the U.S., and as we know from the last year and a half, many workers in many industries have taken or threatened strike action as a way of extracting higher wages commensurate with the inflation that they're experiencing with their families at the gas pump and in the supermarket.
Dean John Quelch, always good to have you, sir, University of Miami. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you, Phil.